don't go anywhere, as we have one more very interesting discussion that's coming up, and this is related to the Bangladesh elections, Ankur.
Yes, definitely, and it's a D-Day in Bangladesh because India's neighboring country witnessed its first general elections after nationwide protests in August 2024, and that had led to the ouster of Sheikh Hasina. The general elections were held simultaneously along with the referendum on a complex 84-point reform package introduced by interim chief Muhammad Yunus. The contest is mainly between two parties, Bangladesh National Party, which is called BNP, and Jamaat-e-Islami. Chairman of BNP, Tariq Rahman, is touted to be the front runner for the post of PM, while Jamaat-e-Islami's Shafiqur Rahman is also in the fray. Srinjoy is actually joining to decode what does this election mean and what could be the result scenario.
The Bangladesh elections are a very important event for India, primarily because this is after nearly a year and a half that elections are happening and a neighboring country is getting a representative government. One expects BNP to win, but importantly, the party that got independence for Bangladesh, the Awami League, is not taking part. That's something very significant. Also, if the BNP wins, then at least it means there's a representative government for a country that has a population equivalent to the population of Germany and France put together. So it's a big moment, and hopefully it will be free and fair and peaceful, apart from the incidents we've heard of, and hopefully relations with India will improve.
All right, so that was my colleague Srinjoy putting into perspective Bangladesh elections, and of course to discuss this and more further, and what do these elections really hold for Bangladesh and of course for India as well. We're now joined by Harshvi Pant. He's the Vice President to RF. Thank you very much, Mr. Pant, for taking the time out and speaking to us here on ET. Now, my first question to you. Will this election bring about any radical change in the way that the country is being run, and what are the ramifications and implications for India if BNP comes to power?
Very significant elections, I think, once in a lifetime, once in a generation election moment for Bangladesh, for India, for the region. I think certainly the hope is that these elections, which have been largely free and fair on the face of it, except the fact that Awami League has been barred from participating, will lead to a victory, will lead to a government that is stable, that can give governance to Bangladesh. And I think largely India would be looking at a government that can stabilize ties after a long, since 2024, when the ties have been going downhill under the Yunus government. So I think there is a lot for India to look forward to, and potentially a rebuilding of this relationship at a pivotal moment in India-Bangladesh relations, when both India and Bangladesh, perhaps for their own requirements, need this reset. So a very important moment, I believe, and hopefully it will set the trajectory for Bangladesh's future, whether it will remain a secular, on the path of its secular nationalism, or will the Islamist hardliners take over? I think that's also a big question facing Bangladesh at this point.
And Mr. Pant, does this also depend who comes to power? As the pre-polls are indicating that BNP chances are stronger, but if it happens other way around, the situation will be different for India?
Somewhat. I think BNP, of course, India has dealt with BNP in the past. We know in more ways than one how BNP works, what is the leadership. We have engaged with the leadership just last December when BNP leader Khaleda Zia expired. Indian foreign minister was there and handed over a letter from the prime minister to her son. So I think there is certainly a relationship there which can be nurtured. Although when BNP was in power in the past, it had a strong anti-India orientation. Though I think largely what we also see is that when parties, despite their anti-India orientation, when they come to governance, They have to be pragmatic. And so I think largely BNP would be good in more ways than one. The issue, of course, would be different. The issues would be different if Jamaat wins and Jamaat has get a hold over the governance structures. Although, if we look carefully at what Jamaat leaders have said during campaigning, they have been very measured in their tone. At least on the surface, they have said that, look, they want to focus on governance. They want to focus on pro-people choices, pro-people moves, pro-people policies. So I think largely there is also a recognition that when you are a party outside power structures, you can say and do whatever you want. But when you govern, you have to be a bit pragmatic. So hopefully, whoever comes to power will be able to manage a relationship with India, which is pragmatic and forward-looking. But if there is a choice to be made, then certainly BNP is a better choice amongst the candidates at the moment.
Absolutely, Mr. Pant. That seems to be a better choice, and it remains to be seen what the strategy or the foreign policy priorities will be with respect to India. But since you mentioned the Jamaat chief, I'm going to take you back to his comments yesterday. He said that he doesn't consider anyone a minority in Bangladesh. So if Jamaat comes back, or for that matter, if BNP also comes back, will the protection of minorities, will that be an immediate priority for the new government? Because let's also look back at, what Muhammad Yunus also stated when he was appointed as the interim chief, that he wants a new Bangladesh and, of course, inclusive development and all of those slogans that he gave. However, we have only seen the situation deteriorate in Bangladesh as far as minority protection is concerned.
I think this is the big question for Bangladesh to decide for its own, because it's a question of Bangladesh's identity. We have seen Bangladesh position itself since 1970s as a secular national, polity contra Pakistan, which defined its identity in Islamic sense. So I think certainly the ideals of the liberation movement in Bangladesh have not been borne out in spirit, because we have seen the situation of minorities becoming very vulnerable. It has not been taken up as a priority by any government. But of course, under Sheikh Hasina, there was a consensus at the party level that overt antagonism against the minorities would be curtailed, and she did ban a lot of the hardline Islamist parties, including Jamaat. But I think now that patina is gone, the issue certainly for Bangladesh remains how they want to take this forward, how they want to define their identity. And I think Jamaat also we know that had fielded a Hindu candidate for the elections. So certainly both political parties have been trying to allay those concerns. But as you mentioned, we have seen more statements than real action on the ground. So India, I think, certainly would be demanding that more happens on the ground, because we have seen Hindu population, for example, go down in Bangladesh. We have seen minorities being maltreated in Bangladesh. So I think that concern will remain, and India would be hoping that with the new government in power, when the relations are reset, when negotiations restart, India can make this a priority, and India can ensure that the vulnerability of minorities in some ways is alleviated by the policy measures that whichever government comes to power can push forward.
And these elections have happened at a time when US-India trade deal have been announced. There is a fresh deal which has been announced with Bangladesh as well by US. So in this scenario, where you see BNP's alignment, if BNP comes to power, what will be the situation, especially with the dynamics of US and China coming into play vis-a-vis India?
I think this is where perhaps it becomes very interesting, because traditionally we have seen governments in Bangladesh play both India-China card very effectively, play one off against the other. Even, we often say, look, Sheikh Hasina was a very good friend of India. She was indeed. She has been. But under her leadership also, she was very pragmatic in building defense ties with China. China emerged as Bangladesh's most important defense partner under Sheikh Hasina. So clearly, political parties that have run Bangladesh have been very sensitive to the fact that they have two big powers, India and China, as their neighbors, and they play one off against the other in getting the best deal for themselves, which is not anything abnormal. Most small states do that when they have big powers serenading them. But I think the entry of America under Trump has changed the game a bit, because Mr. Trump, as we know, is very transactional. He demands outcomes, and he has signed the trade deal with Bangladesh, has promised zero tariffs if Bangladesh buys raw material from the US. So there is a new reality that is confronting Bangladesh today. And it would be interesting to see between US and China how they manage this relationship, because Mr. Trump, as we all know, can be very, very demanding. And so somewhere therein lies an opportunity for India. Because if India-US relations improve, then I think there'll be many more opportunities to cultivate a relationship with Bangladesh that can look forward and that can look more positively at the economic dynamic.
Absolutely, Mr. Pant. And there is also Pakistan in the picture. So we'll have to see how that Pakistan-China axis, how that really plays out, even as India is hoping, like you stated, for ties to restart, to move into the positive territory. But let me ask you one more question related to, India-Bangladesh ties. Will the new government be pushing for Ms. Hasina's extradition? Because this has been over and over again pushed. And of course, there's been a bit of tension between India and Bangladesh as well, given the fact that India is unlikely to sort of agree to that. So how does that chapter really play out as far as ties between both the countries is concerned?
My own sense would be that there certainly will be a push, because this has been a big demand from the protesters of August 2024, and the Gen Z party, the National Citizenship Party, Citizens Party, has been a very important voice. I mean, they may not get many votes, but certainly there is a youth movement in Bangladesh that will continue to keep this issue alive, and there'll be pressure on whichever government is formed to take this issue seriously with India in ways that perhaps will lead to some back and forth between India and Bangladesh. I think the question would be whether the new government in Bangladesh would like to define the entirety of India-Bangladesh relations through the prism of Sheikh Hasina, or whether there are other avenues and opportunities available that can be sustained and managed. Because if the issue becomes only about Sheikh Hasina, then I think we are in difficult waters. But if the government, as is expected, is pragmatic, that this can be one of the issues which can be debated, which can be discussed, which can be negotiated over a period of time. But other issues need to move on. If that's the sentiment, then I think
right, Mr. Pant, that is something to be watched out for, and we'll get a clearer picture tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining with your views on this matter.